Hello and welcome to today's cooking episode, which is actually not about cooking but baking, as I will show you how to make the famous German Black Forest cake, the Black Forest Gâteau, or as we say in German, the Schwarzwälder Kirschtorte. My name is Gisela Rückert and I work at the Viking headquarters in Basel for quite many years now. I was also born and raised in the area, in the foothills of the Black Forest, so to say, not too far away from Basel, which is still my home today. There is a strong tradition in Germany, and particularly in our area, of serving cake at any family gathering. We call it Kaffee und Kuchen, and normally there's a selection of at least 3 to 4 cakes, but somehow the Black Forest Gâteau would always stick out, kind of like the queen of cakes, so to say. This delicious cake consists of a cocoa sponge cake, cherry layers with a swig of kirsch, the famous Kirschwasser, the cherry spirit or clear spirit made from cherries, lots of whipped cream and chocolate sprinkles on top. I'm delighted to share this recipe, which originates from a very old cookbook which I inherited from my grandmother. It's almost falling apart, but the content is still fine. This is literally 100 years old. And looking up some history data, one finds out that the origin of this tasty cake actually takes back to the 1930s, where apparently a Swabian baker who was born and raised in the Black Forest area created and designed this cake. And there are several legends about the name of this cake. One says, for instance, it derives from the ingredient, the Kirschwasser, which is supposed to be a mandatory ingredient to justify the name. And another one says that it refers to the traditional costume of the unmarried women of the Black Forest, who used to wear a big, huge hat with big red pompons on top of it. Now, I don't have that hat, but I have a ring, which gives you the idea of how that one looks. And those of you who have done our Rhine getaway cruise might have already seen these during the excursion to the Black Forest. So whatever is true, I can definitely say that when I was a child, this gâteau always played a huge role in my family, and it is still one of my favorites, or actually the favorite today. And when I prepared for this video, I even remembered that in my younger years, when I spent some time abroad as an au pair in a family in Ventura in California, I already used to make this cake for my host family back then, and I still have a picture of that one too. What I like about this recipe is that it uses simple and straightforward ingredients, and you will actually be surprised how easy this is to make. So let's give it a try. We start with the dough, which is a classic sponge cake flavored with plenty of cocoa powder. So here's what we need. 6 eggs, and you want to make sure you whisk the egg yolk and the white separately. 200 grams or 1 cup of white sugar. 200 grams or 1.5 cups of all-purpose flour. 50 grams or half a cup of cocoa powder, and 50 grams or half a cup of cornstarch. A pinch of salt and 2 teaspoons of baking powder. That's it. And you will see I will be using a very generic standard mixer, as this is a light and fluffy batter. And I have prepared a 26 equivalent to 10 inches pan with a base of parchment paper so it won't stick. And we preheat the oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit or 180 degrees Celsius. For the filling, we need 350 grams or 12 ounces of canned cherries with their liquid. And make sure you keep 16 of them separate for the final decoration. We heat them and thicken them with 2 tablespoons of cornstarch and 1 tablespoon of sugar for sweetness. We also beat 1 liter or 35 ounces of whole cream to get a nice whipped cream. And we add 40 grams or 1.5 ounces of stabilizer to keep it nice and firm. And of course, we also need our Kirschwasser, the kirsch spirit, 9 tablespoons of it. And for final decoration, approximately 100 grams or 3.5 ounces of chocolate flakes. So now let's get started with the batter. I've separated the eggs into yolks and egg whites, and I've beaten the egg white with a pinch of salt until very stiff. I've also mixed together the dry ingredients, which is the flour, the cornstarch, the cocoa, and the baking powder. And I will now beat the egg yolks, and optionally I've added 4 tablespoons of warm water so the dough will be even fluffier. And I mix this with the sugar and beat for about 5 to 6 minutes. You could also do half the sugar with the egg yolk and the other half with the egg whites. So this is the consistency of our batter of egg yolks and the remaining sugar. And the next step is now that we proceed not with the mixer anymore, but just with the whisk to make sure we don't destroy the fluffiness of this delicate sponge dough. And we will now sift the dry ingredients, which is the flour, the cocoa powder, the baking powder, and the cornstarch, alternating with the whisked egg white, and make sure we mix it well together, but just gently enough that there are no more pockets of flours in the dough, and don't overmix. I do this in 2 steps, half of it first and then add the other half. So you just want to be very careful, as we want the dough to remain light and fluffy in the end. Okay, here we go. So this is our batter at the end, light and fluffy still. I hope there are no flour pockets remaining. And we now pour it into our prepared pan. One little hint here, it's actually important that you don't grease the sides of the pan, because otherwise the dough cannot really rise. So only the bottom with the paper, nothing else. And then I pour this in here. Making sure it's nice and kind of like equally flattened, like that. And then into the oven. And we bake it for 20 to 30 minutes. This depends a bit on your oven. Looks like our cake is ready. We do the toothpick test. If that one comes out clean, you can remove the cake from the oven. Okay, so I will loosen it on the sides with a small knife, just like that. And then we can open the pan and here we go. This is it. We'll let it cool and then cut it in 3 pieces. This one has a little bulge, but actually that doesn't matter. We can still deal with that later. So for the cherry filling, I'm now heating up the cherries with the liquid that comes with it. And before we do so, we actually take away a couple of teaspoons of the liquid to dissolve the cornstarch. You can be generous here, because this one you later on need to pour into the skillet. So it dissolves just like that. And please remember to take away or keep separate 16 of the cherries for the final decoration. You heat this until it cooks, and then we add the cornstarch mix to it. So the cornstarch is fully dissolved, and as soon as the cherries start to cook, we take it away from the stove and pour in the cornstarch mix. Make sure that you immediately start to stir again, as you want this to dissolve completely in the mixture. It will have this milky shade, and you just keep on stirring until it becomes clear again. As you can see, it thickens quite well. We'll set this aside now and let it cool and proceed with the whipped cream. And I would recommend to whip the cream in 2 portions and do half of it first and then the other half to make sure it stays nice and firm. Here's our final whipped cream, and I also added 1 tablespoon of sugar to it. That's actually according to your liking. We want to have it not too sweet on purpose, but if you prefer it to be sweeter, you can of course add more. So this is our sponge cake, and since this one has a little bulge, I'm actually cutting off a little bit of it so it will be more flat, and I'm sure my kids will be happy to eat this part. Just like that. I'm not using this for my cake. And then the rest we cut into 3 pieces. You need a long knife. Just like that. That is our layer number 1. And then this one I cut in half. And this makes our layer number 2 and 3. Need some more room here. My kitchen is apparently too small. Just like that. So we are ready to assemble the final gâteau. And I have here my cake plate and my layers of sponge cake. And the one that I cut from the top, that will actually build my bottom, kind of upside down. And I have prepared these parchment paper layers, just so we don't ruin the cake plate right away. Just, it's a bit easier, so we don't smear on the plate. Now, most important ingredient, our Kirschwasser. And I'm using about 3 tablespoons per layer. Optional, of course, more if you like, or less. And you just pour it nicely over the sponge cake, like that. Next, we add about half of the cherries. These are nice and thickened now. Make sure they really cooled down, otherwise your whipped cream will melt if you put it on top again. Doesn't have to be too much. Make sure you have enough left for the second layer. I think that's it. And then whipped cream. Remember, this is only half of our whipped cream, so we have plenty then for the outside decoration of the cake. I'm using about half for this layer. This smells yummy already. just like that. And then comes the middle layer of our sponge cake. Press it slightly, just like that. And guess what? 3 more tablespoons of kirsch. Of course, if this is made for children, you might not use the kirsch. Next round of cherries. Can actually use all the rest of it. Yeah, that's about it. Well, that's okay. There you go. And the rest of the whipped cream. And the last one on top, upside down. This is the one that still has the parchment paper on top. And there you go. Already looks like a gâteau, right? Don't forget the last 3 tablespoons of kirsch, also on the last layer. Like that. And before I now proceed, I will whip the second batch of the cream and then we can cover it up and that's it. So here's our gâteau. It already looks like one, and now comes the final part where we nicely cover it with the cream, with chocolate sprinkles and with our leftover cherries at the end. I have a variety of kitchen tools here. Like this one or like this one or the spatula. I even like to do it just with a regular knife. That might be your personal preference, what works best. So we scoop on some cream here. That's at least how I do it. And then we cover the sides. Just about like that. And you proceed all around the entire cake. So the last part is the top, of course. And doing this really reminds me of my childhood, where I would sit next to my mom or my grandmother, hoping that they would have a scoop or a little bit of the cream left over for me. So maybe I should feed a little bit to my cameraman here, which is actually my husband. Thank you for filming. And yeah, we're coming to the end. As I said, whatever tool you prefer for doing this, the idea is that it's nice and flat. About like that. The chocolate sprinkles still come on top, so it does not have to be perfect. Don't worry. And by the way, important to say, you should leave about 1/3 maybe of the cream or 1/4 of the whipped cream, as we need some for the final tweak on top of it. So I filled the rest of the cream into the pastry bag, which has a star-shaped front. And I put this into the fridge until we're done with the chocolate sprinkles. I do the sprinkles first. So while the cream rests in the fridge, we proceed with the chocolate sprinkles. And I have to admit, this is probably what I find the most difficult part, as we want to put the chocolate sprinkles here to the sides. And I'm using again my spatula to support this. But don't worry if you feel, oh my gosh, this is too difficult, or this won't last or work well. You could as well leave the sides white, means no chocolate sprinkles here, but just the cream. And that reminds me, by the way, of the third legend where the name comes from. They also say the fully covered cake with the dark chocolate sprinkles reminds one of the Black Forest, as the cake is kind of black as well. Now, as you can see, I already removed my parchment paper, so the plate comes out nice and clean, and I've saved the chocolate flakes that fell down. And we now apply the cream roses around the top of the cake, just like that. One after each other. Make sure the whipped cream is chilled enough so it won't start to melt. And then the remaining chocolate flakes in the center of the cake. This kind of depends how much you have left over. You can sprinkle it on top or cover the entire cake just as you like. So I decided to leave it like that, no more cream, and just the final step, the cherries. On top of it. I think we need to invite some guests now that we have a cake. So this is the end of my demonstration. Thank you for joining me. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I did. While we eat our cake, I leave you with Karin Hagen exploring even more in Germany, and I hope to see you on one of our future river cruises in Germany.
In Nuremberg's medieval district, I'm off to taste some of Germany's most loved foods.
I'm here with my friend Tom from Nuremberg, and you're going to tell us a little bit about typical German sausages.
Yeah, I love my German food. Look at that. What is very specific are these little tiny sausages. When they close the gates at night, they're supposed to go through the keyhole. The poor outside can eat the nice Nuremberg sausages. You get them on a tin plate normally, and when you have them to go, you get them on a bun. But when you have them in the restaurant, you should definitely try the German bread. Very tasty, very healthy.
These look like American pretzels.
They are an invention from Germany. We have paintings in Germany from the 12th century showing them already. It's also a symbol of the bakeries in Germany. It's fantastic. You get this in every corner. You should definitely try that.
Okay, with a sausage.
And you can eat it on a fork. This is how they served this in the Middle Ages. We have also paintings from that day showing people with a fork and a sausage and a pretzel. Enjoy.
Okay, so one bite of each. Double-fisted eating.
So you can also eat the sausages with potato salad, and you can also have sauerkraut with this. Very
You have
German.
sauerkraut with everything in Germany.
Actually, we
Almost.
have.
Yeah.
We have. And we have, this is much bigger than the tiny Nuremberg ones. These are Franconian sausages.
They're black.
Yeah, they're black because they are smoked,
Okay.
which gives a very nice taste. Or you try these ones, which are very, very spicy, but also tasty.
Okay, can I try one of those?
Yes, you can actually.
And do you have to peel away the black skin, or is the
No,
whole sausage black?
No, you can eat it with the skin. You don't have to peel it away.
Okay.
It's nice. It looks weird, but it's tasty. Yeah. Try it. It's nice.
But it's not black all the way through.
No. It's only the skin because it's smoked. But it's tasty. And here's the various types of mustard. We've got a sweet one, we've got a regular one, and one with estragon. Or you also can try the horseradish, but that is very spicy. Try this with a traditional Nuremberg sausage.
And you literally dip the sausage in the horseradish. It's a little difficult to get it to stick, but all right. And since I'm not a big fan of horseradish, you can tell me what it tastes like.
I could live on that every day. And now we finish it up with a nice German beer. I've got a wheat beer here, and this is a light beer.
And I'll take the light, you'll take the wheat beer. Prost, skål.
Prost, as we say in German.
Prost.
Tucked into the forested banks of Germany's Main River is Schloss Levenstein. This prized location hand-picked long ago.
The wife of our ancestor, she sent out riders and they checked all the villages along the river where the parish books showed the best weather, the most fresh wind, the least fog, and she bought the land, so that was done.
The whole estate is so full of nature, you lose your way. Nothing is comparable to this spot.
In this idyllic setting, the Levensteins thrived. Unlike most, the family's rise to prominence came not militarily, but via a more interesting route.
One of our philosophies was it's much nicer to grow by marriage than by war. So we never won anything by war, but we won quite a bit by marrying nice girls with a bit of property attached to it.
This grand estate was the only French-style palace in Lower Franconia. The vision of Rémy de la Fosse, architect of the Château de Versailles. Official archives trace the family roots back to the year 900, and reminders of their enduring legacy and traditions are plentiful. But one of the family's most precious possessions cannot be found adorning these walls, or for that matter, anywhere within the confines of this grand palace. That treasure is Homburg Kalmuth, a rugged escarpment with a remarkable combination of soil and microclimate. Over the centuries, the Levensteins have cultivated some of the region's most desirable grapes along this imposing cliff. Despite inclines of up to 80 degrees, the property is a priceless asset for viticulture.
Of course, the quality of the wine always depends on the spot. So just by history and tradition, the aristocratic families have the best spots.
Winemaking grew into a passion when the family discovered the grapes actually thrived in the withering heat and unique geology of this ancient place.
The name already is pre-Celtic, so it's a very, very old name, and it means a warm place where you can stay over winter.
In the 12th century, monks built the nearly 8 miles of vined terraces. But 1,000 years before that, the site was planted with another crop, by the Romans.
The pharmacist of the Roman legion found out he could plant all his medical herbs and not import them from Rome in a dried version, but he had them fresh. We had this checked by a botanist, and they discovered 120 Roman medical plants, all coming from the southeast Mediterranean, and they have survived 2,000 years.
For us, we feel all this history, and the microclimate there is very special. It's probably the warmest microclimate in Bavaria. We totally feel Mediterranean, and with the Mediterranean feeling, we have the Mediterranean taste in the wine.
Harvesting this bounty is anything but easy.
There are no machines, it's all hand harvest. The sun burns down, it's steep, it's difficult to hold the balance. It's a challenge, but the quality is so well known that we keep on.
After the harvest, new wines are born in the ultra-modern wine gut, built within the historic stables. Combining insight and expertise, the grapes receive exceptional care.
On one level, they are pressed by a technology which is the softest you can have, and then they are pumped in one level into the barrels.
Grapes from the Rheingau and Baden add depth and diversity. It's a hands-on process inspired by centuries of acquired wisdom.
We make wine in a very natural fashion. When the grapes come here into the cellar, nothing is added to it. No chemical, of course, no sugar. That means it's very clear and natural.
Each vintage is infused with the character of the season, the enchanting power of nature untouched. Schloss Levenstein is a rare treasure, the essence of working aristocracy and an enduring wine legacy in the heart of Franconia.